Peter Mousaferiadis is an expert in cultural inclusion and my guest. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Patricia. It's great to see you.
Firstly, what do you make of what Mr Albanese said?
Well, I think this is part of a bigger problem that we have in society, and that is that we don't value and understand diversity in all its forms. And so what I mean by that is, there's maybe three problems, is that we don't understand and value mutuality and representation and the benefits that representation brings to organisations. And we're not really taking a data-driven approach to being able to create more representative society. So, I would be asking, how's the community of Fowler feeling at the moment about this?
Okay, what did you make of the decision in Fowler? Because the argument that's been made by Anthony Albanese and others is that you've got to look at the across-the-board approach, not just this one seat.
Yeah, and that's a good point that he's making. But, I think we need to go back to the community again and see how the community is feeling about this. And I think this is going to start to create some resentment and probably some distrust. And I think, we also need to keep in mind that the hallmark of any successful democratic society is when it's representative of its people. And if it's not, then it's basically failing. That's what I would say to Albanese.
Okay. Do you think a diversity quota should be looked at by political parties to prevent this sort of thing and to have a more representative parliament? The Labor Party did that, of course, with gender. It's discussing it on cultural diversity, but could it work?
Absolutely. I wouldn't go as far as saying maybe quotas, but maybe targets, because, with quotas, it has sort of an implication that we need to mandate them. But I think we need to work towards how can we start to take a data-driven approach towards, targets that communities are going to start to feel that they're being more included and represented in all levels of government, and not only government but also societies. And I think we need to go way beyond this gender diversity debate at the moment and start to take on an intersectional approach where we start to look at gender against many other different dimensions of diversity, ethnicity, age, different types of abilities and so forth.
Yeah, look, I understand that, but ultimately the view I hear from women and people of culturally diverse backgrounds, sometimes women, is that it often protects, if I can be blunt, white men. They continue to have a lot of the space, and then it's the women and the culturally diverse, and perhaps sometimes they're the same, fighting it out for a small part of that pie. How do we get out of that headspace?
Well, once again, I think it comes back to targets, but it's also beginning to talk about the opportunities that lie ahead of us when we start to become more representative. And there's been a ton of studies that have been done out there. I mean, just in the health sector alone, Health West here in Victoria began to do a whole lot of research. And what they discovered was that hospitals which had workforces which were more representative of their communities tended to have better health outcomes and were more efficient. Now, which society isn't going to want better health outcomes for their communities?
Okay, so diversity leads to better outcomes because there's more of a connection. But obviously diversity is a big open question about what kind of cultural diversity you include. How do you do that in a way that's truly representative of the country?
Well, you look at what we describe as mutuality, which is you begin to look at the percentage of the community and then you go, how can we start to develop targets that start to reflect the community? So it all comes back to data. And I think we now live in an age where we can start to use technology and also data sets that exist out there that allow us to start to work towards greater representation. And I don't think it's a big ask for governments and all sectors of society to go, you know what, by us becoming more representative, there's going to be so many benefits. And they're not just going to be health outcomes, but we're going to be more productive, we're going to be more innovative, and society is going to be benefit overall.
So by Labor making this decision to parachute Christina Keneally into that seat, they've actually accidentally, I don't know if it was on purpose, spearheaded a big debate about multicultural, diverse parliaments, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start to look at, the federal parliament. Something like, I think about 13 or 14% of Australia's population, comes from an Asian background. And then if you start to look at, the Australian parliament, I think there's something like maybe 5 out of 227 members of parliament who have an Asian background. So I think there's a lot of work that's got to be done in representation. But I come back once again to taking a data-driven approach and the benefits and how communities are going to are ultimately going to receive the rewards out of this.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
Joining me there is Peter Mousaferiadis. He's an expert on cultural inclusion.